The Capitol was quieter at night. Not empty, but quiet in the way cathedrals are after prayer, haunted by intentions. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett walked alone through the marbled corridor, her heels clicking steadily beneath the vaulted ceilings. Each footstep echoed back at her like a judgment. On her phone, headlines screamed without sound. Federal oversight bill sparks alarm among civil rights groups. Blackburn's new judiciary bill could reshape state election control. She didn't stop scrolling? She didn't need to. Every article said the same thing in different fonts. Her district, their stories. Their fears marched behind her like ghosts. Older black voters who still remembered poll taxes. Teenagers denied registration for minor technicalities. A Latina single mother who stood in line for 6 hours only to be told her ID wasn't valid. Jasmine had shaken their hands, had looked into their eyes when they asked, "Will you protect our voice?" A young aide jogged to catch up beside her, holding out a manila folder. "The testimony package," he whispered. "But there's something else. You haven't opened this one yet." He handed her a separate, unmarked envelope. On her phone, a new subject line appeared, urgent, suppressed testimonies. She didn't open it. Not yet. She just stared at it as the elevator doors opened with a chime. "Is it real?" she asked, not looking up. "We don't know. But if it is, it connects Marsha's donors to at least 3 state officials under federal investigation for voter suppression." She exhaled slowly. "No fear, just pressure. Pressure like steel under heat. The kind that reforms or snaps. Schedule a legal review tonight?" "Quietly," she said, as the elevator descended. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored wall, exhausted, but locked in purpose. 2 days until the hearing, and a system sharpening its knives across the Capitol. The glow of soft lighting wrapped around a mahogany-paneled studio. A news anchor smiled politely, but the tension in the room was coiled tight beneath practiced grins and professional posture. Senator Marsha Blackburn leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, hands folded, her voice laced with the charm of a woman who had survived too many political winters. "The states," she said smoothly, "have the right to regulate their own elections. That's not just my belief, it's constitutional law. The federal government's role should be supportive, not intrusive." The anchor nodded, deferring with all the passivity of a well-fed host. Marsha smiled again, eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. The way a seasoned predator watches a room it already owns. Behind the scenes, cameras stopped rolling. Her media team buzzed around her like bees orbiting a queen. Her top aide approached, whispering into her ear, "She's pushing for subpoena power. Crockett, word is she's sitting on something. Could be redacted memos from 2022, Marsha's." Smile faltered for half a beat. Just long enough for her eyes to harden. "Who leaked it?" "No confirmation. But there's chatter. Someone inside the department flagged her team after seeing new rollbacks in Shelby County." Marsha stood and smoothed her blazer, walking off set into the back corridor where lobbyists waited, faces familiar, names disposable. One stepped forward, a man in a tailored charcoal suit, holding a plain folder marked legal correspondence, private channels, inside, internal emails, between local election boards and a pact tied to her top campaign donor. The language was technical, almost cold. Target non-compliant districts. Purge inactive voters before November window. Limit satellite offices in urban sectors. "This was never supposed to surface," he said quietly. Marsha closed the folder without looking up. "Then make sure it doesn't." He hesitated. "What about Crockett?" "She's loud," Marsha said. "But loud burns fast, especially when it's standing alone." The elevator opened. She stepped inside. For a brief moment, her face reflected in the metal wall, composed, beautiful, powerful, and hollow. Like a statue carved for worship, but never meant to weep. As the doors shut, she turned her head just slightly and muttered, almost to herself, "She's not ready for this war." The house cloakroom smelled of polished wood, stale coffee, and old compromises. It was where truth went to get watered down, where conviction softened into suggestion, and where ambition learned to bow. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood near a narrow window, watching the pale morning light smear across the Capitol dome. Behind her, murmurs overlapped in cautious tones. A few senior Democrats huddled near the fireplacemen who had been in office long enough to forget what it felt like to lose a vote, and longer still since they'd stood for one that might cost them something. "Jasmine," came a voice, low and measured. Congressman Denton, veteran legislator, member of the House Judiciary Committee. He approached with the cadence of someone who wasn't used to being challenged, and certainly not by a freshman congresswoman from South Dallas. "You're making noise," he said. Jasmine didn't turn. "That's the job," she replied. He gave a thin smile. "No, the job is knowing when noise becomes static." Now she turned, slowly, and when silence becomes complicity, a pause. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "This hearing's being watched by donors, by independents, by the Senate floor. You go after Marsha on national television with half-substantiated documents, and you give them the ammunition to label this whole party unstable." Jasmine held his gaze. "She's trying to take federal protection off the table for counties with long living histories of voter suppression. This isn't a debate. It's a funeral in disguise." Denton exhaled. He glanced around the room to make sure no one was listening too closely. "She's protected, and you're one viral clip away from losing your political capital before you even cash it." Jasmine stepped closer. "I didn't come here to collect capital. I came here because people back home have been silenced for generations. And I don't care if I burn every favor I've never been offered. I'm not letting this bill slide under cover of decorum." The congressman looked at her like she was a living relic idealism in a tailored suit. "You're either very brave," he said, "or very foolish." "I've had to be both," she said softly. As Denton walked away, her aide emerged from the shadows, holding a thin folder. "Just came in," he whispered. "Subpoena request, Shelby County testimony." Jasmine took it without a word, running her fingers along the edge like it might cut her if she wasn't careful. Outside, reporters gathered. Cameras clicked. A few whispered her name like they were trying it on for size. Inside, she gripped the folder tight. Let them whisper. Soon, the system would hear her speak. The room was built for order, but soaked in theater, long mahogany tables, stretched beneath gilded chandeliers, their polished surfaces gleaming under the unforgiving glare of the cameras. American flags stood like sentinels behind the elevated dais. Nameplates gleamed like gravestones for whatever truth might be buried beneath the day's proceedings. The Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Constitutional Oversight was now in session. Senator Marsha Blackburn entered first, flanked by her staff. Every step calibrated, every hair in place. She wore pearl earrings, a white blazer, and the cold, pleasant smile of someone who had no intention of losing. "Good morning," she began, her voice soft but cutting. "Today we open dialogue on the Restoration of State Electoral Autonomy Act, an effort to return rightful authority to the states, free from federal overreach." She let the phrase hang like perfume, words chosen for how they sounded, not what they meant. Cameras flashed, senators murmured. No one interrupted. At the opposite end of the table, Jasmine Crockett sat in silence. She wore a dark blue suit with no frills, her natural curls pinned back. In her lap sat a legal pad filled with scribbled names, cases, codes, some underlined twice in red ink. Her aide leaned in. "She's laying it out like it's bipartisan reform," soft language. "She's framing it as federalism, not suppression." Jasmine didn't blink, because that's how the snake sheds its skin. Across the aisle, Blackburn turned the page of her opening statement with theatrical poise. "Our great nation was built on the principle that power must be closest to the people. And yet, federal interference has undermined the will of local communities, particularly in election security." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. She flipped open the binder in front of her, revealing the bill's actual language, page 47, section B, a clause that, if enacted, would remove Federal Department of Justice oversight from counties, previously flagged for racial discrimination in voting procedures. No hearings, no appeals, just gone. Next to her, civil rights attorney Malik Rhodes shifted in his seat, visibly tense. Jasmine reached under the table and slid him a single sticky note. "Let her finish. Then we cut it open." Blackburn wrapped her opening. "I look forward to reasoned Civil discourse today, she said, closing her folder. Jasmine adjusted her microphone, a soft click echoing like a pistol being cocked. Senator, she said, voice low, steady. Would you agree that history teaches us vigilance is the price of justice? Blackburn smiled tightly. I'd say history teaches us the dangers of overreach. Jasmine nodded slowly. Then let's open the record. In the gallery, dozens leaned forward. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was ignition. The room stilled as Jasmine adjusted her stack of papers and drew a thin red line beneath the words she was about to speak. No gavel, no shouting. Just the kind of quiet that means someone's about to get undressed by truth. She cleared her throat, her voice sharp, unflinching. I'd like to direct attention to page 47, section B, line 9 of the proposed bill. The clause reads, federal oversight may be deemed unnecessary in counties that have not demonstrated new violations within a 10-year window, provided local certifying boards maintain state-level compliance protocols. She paused. That line may sound like harmless bureaucracy, but let me tell you what it really means. She leaned in. The microphones caught every breath. It means that Shelby County, where black voter turnout was suppressed in 2022 using DMV closures, would be allowed to purge voter rolls without a single federal check. It means Harris County, which documented polling machine shortages in Latino districts, would get a free pass under the illusion of local autonomy. Across the aisle, Marsha's pen tapped once, then stopped. Crockett continued, This is not empowerment, this is camouflage. It's the trapdoor clause engineered to sound like reform, but structured to disappear oversight exactly where it's most needed. A faint murmur rose from the gallery activists, observers, staffers recognizing the clause they'd skimmed past, now exploding under Crockett's precision. Blackburn responded, calm and clipped. Congresswoman Crockett, the language in question, was reviewed by bipartisan legal analysts. It allows for streamlining, not suppression. Jasmine nodded slowly. Then let me read from case number 17CV1189, Jefferson v. Board of Elections, Shelby County. The plaintiff, a 68-year-old woman named Lillian Harper, attempted to vote in the 2022 midterms. She was turned away due to an administrative purge she never knew about. She had voted in every election since 1968. She looked directly at Marsha. Under this bill, that purge would not only be protected, it would be encouraged. And Lillian's voice would be buried under the polite language of efficiency. Blackburn's eyes tightened. This bill returns trust to local governments. Jasmine's voice dropped, but her words cut like razors. Trust without transparency is tyranny with manners. The gallery stirred again. A nearby staffer whispered, She's going for the jugular. Malik leaned toward her, voice low. Media's picking it up, trending within the hour. But Jasmine didn't smile. She didn't relax because she wasn't aiming to trend. She was aiming to reveal. And the blood on this clause was just beginning to show. By sundown, Jasmine Crockett was everywhere. Her voice echoed across cable news panels. Her takedown of Section V replayed in a viral split-screen montage. On one side, her composed delivery beneath Capitol lights. On the other, news anchors blinking, nodding, scrambling to reframe the narrative. Congresswoman Crockett just dismantled the bill's core. Argument live on record. She's redefining how political confrontation works in this chamber. She's a freshman? Seriously? In one clip, a Fox News panelist called her combative. In another, an MSNBC host called her brilliant. Neither knew what to do with the woman who refused to blink. In her hotel room, Jasmine sat on the edge of her bed, shoes off, suit jacket draped over the chair. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Mentions, retweets, requests. CNN, PBS, even The Daily Show. Her aide knocked gently. You need to sleep. She shook her head. What I need is to make sure Marsha doesn't win the next narrative. He placed the file on the table. We might have just the thing. Inside was a confidential report, scheduled testimony from a whistleblower, county registrar, former Blackburn volunteer, signed affidavit attached. If he spoke, he'd tie PAC donations directly. to voter roll purges in southern Tennessee districts. Is he in? She asked. He said he's ready. Security's tight. We've arranged transport through a neutral agency. Jasmine's eyes lingered on the name, Marcus Tillman. You trust him? I trust the paper trail. He's scared, but not running. Outside the window, the Capitol glowed under floodlights. Its dome almost serene against the black sky. She stared at it in silence on another screen. Marsha Blackburn was in mid-interview, smiling wide, dismissing Crockett's emotional theatrics, and doubling down on the bill's necessity. We need to stop making villains out of accountability, Marsha said, her voice sweet, her gaze hard, but Jasmine wasn't watching her. She was reading something Tillman had handwritten at the bottom of his affidavit. I stayed quiet too long. I thought silence made me safe, but it made me guilty. She folded the document and turned to her aide. No press, no tweets. Tomorrow he takes the stand. The aide nodded and stepped out. Jasmine sat back. She could feel the weight of momentum and the eyes of an entire system trying to tilt the board back. Let them tilt. She wasn't here to balance the table. She was here to flip it. The room buzzed with anticipation as day 2 of the hearing began. Cameras were already rolling. Seats filled quickly. Press, legal observers, civil rights leaders, even a few unexpected faces from opposing party offices. Everyone had heard. Crockett had a witness. And if the rumors were true, he wasn't just a witness, he was the match. About to drop on dry timber, Jasmine Crockett walked in with silent precision, every step deliberate. Behind her, Malik Rhodes clutched the affidavit. He didn't speak, but his jaw clenched with anticipation. Senator Blackburn was already seated. Her smile was thinner today, more controlled. The makeup under her eyes was just a shade heavier. She noticed the thick manila folder in Crockett's hand, and for the first time, she didn't look away. The chairwoman gavelled the session into order. Congresswoman Crockett, she said, you may proceed with your witness presentation. Jasmine rose. Her voice carried cleanly through the mic. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I present Marcus Tillman, former registrar of Shelby County, who has submitted a signed affidavit indicating direct knowledge of voter roll purges performed under political pressure and tied to financial incentives from organizations affiliated with this bill's sponsors. She paused. He is here to speak for those whose ballots were erased before they were ever cast. Cameras pivoted to the double doors at the rear of the chamber. Nothing. A long moment passed. Then another. Jasmine blinked once, twice. Behind her, her aide's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen, then quickly stood and walked to her, whispering close. He's not coming. The transport service backed out. Logistical uncertainty. No backup vehicle. His security detail disappeared en route. Jasmine inhaled sharply, but said nothing. Congresswoman, the chair repeated. Is your witness present? She stood straighter. No, Madam Chair, he's not. A low murmur swelled through the gallery. One of the civil rights attorneys looked over, brow furrowed in concern. Marsha leaned into her microphone, her voice laced with honey and venom. Perhaps the Congresswoman's witness couldn't withstand scrutiny after all. Jasmine turned to her, gaze steady. No, Senator, he couldn't withstand fear. And fear, in this institution, has always had powerful allies. The murmur rose into full whispers. Blackburn opened her mouth to respond. But Jasmine kept going, eyes now on the panel. Not Marsha, not the cameras, just the chamber itself. There's a reason people stay quiet. A reason evidence disappears or never makes it to the table. And that reason isn't justice, it's preservation. Preservation of the illusion that this system is clean when it's merely well laundered. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was ashamed. Marsha leaned back in her chair, arms folded. But even she didn't smile, because she knew what had just happened. The witness had been silenced, but the silence itself had just become evidence. Jasmine sat alone in her office. It was late. The building had quieted into a kind of haunted silence, the kind that only government halls know, where ghosts don't wear chains. But credentials? On her desk sat the unopened manila folder, still sealed, still heavy. She had carried it into the hearing, hoping Marcus would speak for himself. But now, with his voice stolen, the folder had become a surrogate heart, beating, waiting. Her hand hovered over it. Knock. She didn't look up. If it's about the committee, it's not. A low voice answered. Male, familiar. She turned. Congressman Luis Ortega stepped in, independent. Razor-sharp former federal prosecutor turned moral renegade. I saw the footage, he said quietly. You handled it? I didn't, Jasmine replied. They silenced him. Ortega looked down at the folder. That it? She nodded. He stepped closer. Then open it. If he couldn't speak, maybe this still can. She slowly unsealed the flap. The documents inside were thick-typed pages, scanned emails, notarized statements, even screenshots of encrypted texts. She pulled the first sheet, read, then the second, then stopped. Her face changed, not with shock, but with something deeper. A slow burn of rage that starts in the chest and rises. Unshakable. Ortega stepped beside her, reading over her shoulder. One of the memos was marked confidential. It was from the Freedom Integrity Alliance, a lobbying group registered under a generic civic code, but here, it was plainly coordinating with campaign donors and key Senate staff, and there, in bullet points, purge methods, target counties. 70% plus minority turnout from 2020, incentivized with discretionary funding to county boards. Language, position as election integrity, avoid race-based terms. Partners, Blackburn, Coulter, Devereaux. Luis exhaled slowly. Jesus. Jasmine didn't blink. This was never about voter security, she whispered. This was reverse engineering an electorate by zip code, by skin tone. She turned the page. Attached was a signed statement from Marcus dated 3 days ago naming specific state officials who had helped carry out the purge under direct instruction, and, at the bottom, I fear retaliation. But the truth has to outlive me. Jasmine closed the folder slowly. Ortega watched her. What are you thinking? She looked up. Eyes clear, voice low, that we don't need a witness anymore. The next morning, the Capitol buzzed with the undercurrent of something unseen. Cameras flashed. Staffers whispered. Phones lit up in pockets and were immediately silenced. Jasmine Crockett walked through the corridors not like a woman under fire, but like someone carrying a match to a powder keg, graceful, deliberate, and dangerous. She was halfway to the Oversight Committee chamber when her phone vibrated. A single text. They know. Ortega. At that same moment, 2 men in suits intercepted her outside the chamber doors. One she recognized, Deputy House Counsel Daryl Finch, a man whose career had been built on neutralizing political explosives before they detonated. Representative Crockett, Finch began, voice as smooth as oil. The chair requests your immediate compliance with an internal review regarding yesterday's hearing conduct. Jasmine blinked. Excuse me? Your introduction of unsanctioned materials, Finch continued, specifically the Marcus Barnes folder. I never opened it during the hearing. Intent is enough, he said sharply. The Ethics Committee received a formal referral this morning. From behind, cameras rolled, reporters leaned in. But Finch only lowered his voice. You've made powerful people very uncomfortable. Jasmine stared him down. Then they can learn to live with discomfort. But Finch wasn't finished. He pulled a folded letter from his briefcase, effective immediately. You are barred from introducing any new materials to today's proceedings pending formal review. If you violate that, we will move for censure. She didn't take the letter. Instead, she stepped around him, walked into the committee room. The moment she entered, every head turned. Senator Coulter looked up from his seat across the aisle, lips twitching in satisfaction. Cameras were trained. The air was hot. Jasmine took her seat, smoothed her blazer, leaned to the mic, but before she could speak, the chair banged his gavel. Before we begin, he said stiffly, I must remind all members of the new procedural guidelines in place for today's session. No new evidence, no surprise witnesses, no deviation from the prepared agenda. Jasmine didn't flinch. She raised her hand. The chair hesitated, then nodded. Congresswoman Crockett. She cleared her throat. Respectfully, Mr. Chair, these new guidelines are not grounded in any formal rules. They were crafted overnight, outside of committee vote, and designed for one purpose only. Coulter cut in, to prevent grandstanding. Jasmine turned her head. No, Senator, to prevent the truth. Gasps. The chair banged the gavel again. If Representative Crockett continues to violate decorum, I'll be forced to expel me? She shot back. Do it right here, in front of every camera. But before you do, ask yourselves why a folder from a dead man has you so afraid. Silence. Not even a cough. Jasmine reached down, lifted a single paper from her binder, not the full folder, just one printed paragraph. Marcus Barnes' statement. She held it up for the cameras. For the world. I don't need to submit it to make it real. The facts exist whether you fear them or not. Finch, from the sidelines, whispered. Into a phone? Coulter turned red. But Jasmine? She sat back. Unshaken. 9 years earlier, Baltimore, Maryland winter. 2016, the wind whipped through the alley like a ghost searching for a name. Snow clung to the corners of abandoned stoops, and the only sound was the soft echo of sirens somewhere. Far off routine in a city that forgot how to sleep. Marcus Barnes was 19. Thin, tired, too smart for his own neighborhood, and just dumb enough to believe truth could save him. He stood outside a rundown storefront, a legal aid clinic run by two black attorneys who took cases no one else wanted. His hands were shaking as he held a thick manila folder stuffed with printed emails, black and white photographs, and handwritten notes. Evidence he'd spent 6 months gathering in silence inside the folder. Names of officers, badge numbers, body, cam footage, timestamps, a written timeline of a murder that the city had labeled an overdose. But Marcus knew the truth. His older brother, Terrence, hadn't overdosed. He'd been beaten in a South Baltimore precinct holding cell. 3 cops had walked in. Only 2 had written a report. The third had been reassigned quietly. Marcus had heard the whispers, he had followed them, and now he was here, heart pounding, teeth clenched, ready to speak. He opened the clinic door. Inside, a woman at the desk looked up. Late 30s, tired eyes, but kind. She smiled. Can I help you? I need a lawyer, Marcus said. I have proof of a police cover-up. 2 weeks later, Washington, D.C., a young intern in the Office of Congressional Oversight passed a sealed envelope to her supervisor. She didn't know who Marcus Barnes was. She didn't know why the envelope had come through a back-channel contact at the legal clinic, but she knew. Protocol, confidential whistleblower materials went into the secure queue. They were supposed to be logged, tagged, and reviewed. This one wasn't. Within an hour, the envelope vanished from the log system entirely. The intern never saw it again. Neither did Marcus. 3 months later, Marcus stood outside the courthouse. Alone. His legal contact had gone silent. The clinic shuttered under financial irregularities, and he had started receiving strange calls at night numbers that never rang twice. Messages left in dead air. He dropped out of college that spring, vanished from public records for 2 years. The last trace was a blog post he wrote in 2019 under a pseudonym. Just 7 words. I was silenced. You were complicit. Then nothing. Until Jasmine Crockett found his sealed folder buried in a forgotten archive marked miscellaneous, non-urgent. Back to present day, Jasmine stared down at the single sheet in her hands. Marcus had done everything right, everything, and still the system swallowed him whole. But now his story was out, the courtroom was quiet, the country was watching.